The lineage of Chasca, deep within the ancestral memory of Central America, is a lineage whose names survive only in whispers, in stories passed down by the warmth of the fire, and in the echoes preserved by communities for centuries. One of those names is Chasca, daughter of a lineage that, according to various oral traditions, did not originate in the lands we know today. Not from El Salvador, but a direct descendant of peoples who came from the south, from Andean regions, bearing ancient and profound cultural traces. Although official history rarely mentions these connections, various indigenous chronicles and accounts collected by scholars in the 19th and 20th centuries refer to travelers from the south who, in ancient times, temporarily settled on the coasts of Central America's Pacific. Some accounts even mention the arrival of figures of high spiritual and political rank, known among certain groups as Lords of the Star, or Guardians of the Dawn's Light. According to these ancient traditions, Chasca was born into a prominent family with significant authority, perhaps closely linked to influential itinerant leaders who guided small developing communities and diligently sought out fertile and safe lands for their people, where they could establish new settlements. His father, identified in the legend as Pachacutec, is said to have been a ruler, priest, or prestigious leader, whose reputation preceded him as a strategist and a deeply spiritual man. Although there is no archaeological evidence to confirm a massive migration from the Andes to Central America, there are indeed striking cultural similarities in ceramics, solar iconographies and ritual structures that have led some anthropologists to consider these connections as possible routes of ancient exchange, or as the reflection of little documented human movements. In this context, Chasca is not presented merely as a young indigenous woman. Rather, she is portrayed as the heir to an Andean tradition, bearer of symbols and knowledge that set her apart within the local community. Her name itself is associated with brightness, the morning, and purity, according to several indigenous languages of the continent. It suggests a figure associated with the cycle of dawn, with pure waters, and with rebirth. It is said that Chasca grew up surrounded by a strict spiritual education, learning to interpret signs in nature, to read the winds and the stars, and to recognize the ritual meaning of saltwater flowers and the song of seabirds. As the daughter of a ruling lineage, she was destined, according to her father's will, for a marriage that would strengthen alliances with neighboring peoples, possibly of Tzu-Tujil or Quiche origin. But despite this path laid out for her since birth, Chasca developed a free spirit. In oral accounts, she is described as curious, observant, and especially close to ordinary people. Fishermen, weavers, guardians of the salt. Her beauty, according to tradition, did not lie only in her features, but in the way she spoke, listened, and approached those who lived outside the circle of power. Chasca's lineage represented a blend between the world of itinerant elites and that of the local peoples who inhabited the Barra de Santiago, a magical place where the ocean and the estuaries meet in a brackish embrace. That place became her home and her refuge, but also the stage where a conflict would begin that would mark her destiny forever. It was a time when leaders sought alliances to protect their communities from external threats. For this reason, her father considered Chasca's marriage to be a key piece in a strategic network of loyalties. However, this political vision would clash with a force that neither he nor the oldest traditions could contain: the unexpected love that would unite Chasca with Acayet, a young fisherman whose humble life stood in stark contrast to the grandeur of her lineage. Chasca's lineage was, in essence, a story of heritage, of expectations, and of an identity shared among distant peoples. But above all, it was the starting point for a truly epic story in which fate is to be profoundly transformed by the most incredibly potent and enduring force in human tradition. Love that courageously defies and ultimately overcomes the established societal order and conventional expectations. This is the origin of the tragedy that would forever mark the memory of the Salvadoran Pacific. And even today, among the waves and the full moon, it seems to repeat itself in whispers, in the lineage from which Chasca came, and the path she chose to follow, even though that path would lead her to defy her own father's command and risk the future he had planned for her. The journey of Pachacutec to Central America. The restless emperor Pachacutec, now transformed into a wise old man, had lost his wife and part of his lineage in internal struggles within the Tawantinsuyo. The chronicles mention that, in his old age, he became a man of long silences, more interested in contemplation than in military expansion. The oral tradition that hovers over Central America holds that, tired of intrigues, he decided to secretly abandon his throne, accompanied only by his most loyal spiritual advisors, his favorite daughter, Chasca. She was part of this small entourage. The sacred map of the south, in the Andean chronicles, there is mention of maps woven into kepis, ceremonial bags with symbolic drawings. On one of those maps, according to Salvadoran legend, there appeared a sun sinking over a warm ocean, a coast with 3 islands, and a spot marked with the Inca symbol of the Lincose, which means good living, balance. It was the sign of the new destination. Pachacutec decided to follow that map, believing that his family would find peace there. And a new beginning. The secret departure to the Andean vessels used in the story is real. Reinforced totora reed boats, the same ones still used in Huanchaco today, which allow for open sea navigation. The story holds that a small fleet set sail from the Peruvian coast. 5 vessels. Dehydrated food. Religious offerings and a small group of warriors who had sworn eternal silence. Chasca traveled in the central vessel, the journey over the belly of the sea. During the journey, a key event occurred. A priest had a vision. A river of silver will lead you to your final destination. This would later be interpreted as a metaphor for the sunlight glinting on the canals of the Central American coasts, the encounter with the peoples of the Isthmus. At this point we mix history with narrative. It is said that upon reaching the coast of what is now Nicaragua, the travelers encountered groups with similar cultural traits. Use of turquoise and jadeite, carvings with spiral patterns, dawn ceremonies. This made them believe they had arrived at the right place. The accounts state that the Incas traveled inland for weeks. The settlement at Barra de Santiago, here is where the part documented by Salvadoran oral tradition comes in. According to fishermen's legends, in the area where Barra de Santiago is today, a group of strangers arrived wearing Andean clothing, performing smoke rituals, and carrying a banner with sun symbols. There, Pachacutec found a place of tranquility, an island surrounded by mangroves, called El Zanate by the natives, where the water shone like metal under the sun. Chasca immediately fell in love with the landscape, the birth of a new lineage. The elders of the area say that the newcomers taught more complex agricultural techniques, ways to measure lunar cycles, rituals of spiritual renewal, and that Pachacutec near the end of his life declared, "Here my lineage will rest in the embrace of the sea." Chasca was seen as his spiritual heir, what he left behind. The Peruvian chronicles mention the mysterious disappearance of the emperor. Legend says that he died on that Central American island, far from wars, and that his followers returned south to keep his fate a secret. This left a void in the Tawantinsuyo, but sowed a new ancestral story in Central America, which survives to this day. Chasca had already grown up as a priestess. She met Acayet, and thus began the most painful chapter of the legend. Pachacutec, filled with the solemnity that only leaders possess, those who feel destiny slipping through their fingers, once again demanded that Chasca abandon Acayet forever. To him, that union was not only impossible, it was a direct challenge to the sacred order of his lineage. But Chasca, with the quiet strength of those who love without counting the consequences, she refused. There was no plea or command that could break the bond that united her to that young Central American warrior. Chasca's refusal not only wounded Pachacutec's pride, but also his sense of duty. In a moment driven by a mix of authority and fear of losing his daughter, he secretly ordered his indigenous warriors, armed with wooden spears tipped with stone, to intercept Acayet on one of the paths leading to the lands where the Inca envoys were staying. The ambush was swift and brutal. Some say that Acayet fought with the determination of those who love without reservation. Others claim he didn't even have a chance to use his spear. What is certain is that the earth was marked by his fall. Acayet, when Chasca heard the rumor that traveled among the shadows, she ran without watching her step. Her heart already knew the truth before she saw it. There she found him, lying down, silent, defeated, not by fate, but by human will. Chasca fell to her knees and took him in her arms. The breeze carried away a lament so deep that those who heard it said it was not the cry of a young woman, but the cry of the water itself. In that moment, she understood that nothing in the world could repair what her father had broken. Her life was split in two. So was her spirit. That moment became the point of no return. It was the wound that changed the course of her story and the spark that ignited the legend, which would be told for generations. The sacred island and the prophecies of the water. The last night of Chasca. The full moon shone over the Barra de Santiago like a silver mirror. Suspended in the sky, Chasca, alone on the beach, held in her hands the small jade pendant that Acayet had secretly carved for her. The sea wind still carried the echo of his laughter, and every wave that broke against the rocks seemed to pronounce his name. The news of Acayet's death, executed by order of Pachacutec, had pierced her spirit. Like a spear, the young princess, heir to the solar lineage of the Andes, understood that her life would never be the same again. That night, the fishermen who saw her walk toward the island, El Zanate, described something they would never forget. A young woman dressed in white, surrounded by a strange light, as if her steps were illuminated from within. The hidden sanctuary beneath the island, deep within El Zanate? There was a small sanctuary that only the royal family knew about. It was a place where Pachacutec meditated and made offerings to protect his exile. There stood an altar of red clay, volcanic stones, and ashes mixed with herbs from the Peruvian highlands, a fragment of the Andean world transplanted to the heart of Central America. Chasca had gone to that sanctuary many times with her father. Had she seen the Inca spill copal smoke over the waters of the estuary and recite ancient prayers? Water remembers, water keeps, water returns. But now the young woman came to the sanctuary to say goodbye. Not as the daughter of an emperor, but as a woman who had lost everything to the sacrifice of love. Chasca took the ceremonial jar and filled it with water from the estuary, then placed Acayet's pendant inside. She lit the incense, and through tears, let the wind carry the smoke toward the mangroves. The oral chronicles of the Ba tell that, without screaming or crying, she willingly tied a rope made of plant fiber around her waist, and to a rock on the shore. Some fishermen tried to stop her, but when they approached, they said a huge wave, like a dark shroud, completely covered her, and she disappeared. Since that night, when the moon is full, many claim to have seen a small boat crossing the bar, with a couple sitting at the bow, the girl with long hair, the fisherman with his net, both smiling, both made of light. The return of the spirit of the water. After Chasca's death, the island began to change. The water around it became more transparent. Fish gathered in areas where there had been no life before, the elders said. Chasca did not die. Chasca returned to the water to feed her people. The shellfish gatherers swore they felt gentle hands pushing the nets full. And sometimes a sweet fragrance, like flowers from the highlands, would appear on the shore without explanation. Pachacutec, devastated, realized that his decision had destroyed his own blood. For weeks, he shut himself away in a cabin, staring at the sea. And when he emerged, he recounted a dream that would forever mark the tradition. My daughter spoke to me from the depths of the water and told me that difficult times would come for our descendants, but that one day they would hear the voice of the water again, and with it, they would remember who they truly are, the sunken island years later. An earthquake opened deep cracks along the coast. A minor tsunami altered the geography of the estuary and the Zanate, the island where Chasca and Acayet lived. It was partially submerged under the water. Today, only small mounds and mangrove roots remain, emerging at low tide. Local divers claim that beneath the muddy bottom, there are remains of ancient structures, arranged stones, a circle of stakes, and fragments of very fine pottery, too fine to be local. Many believe these are the remains of the sanctuary of Pachacutec, the prophecies of the water. Thank you. The elders say that, before disappearing, Pachacutec left one last warning. When the water speaks again, when the nets shine without the sun, when the children forget their origins, then Chasca will return. Not as a person, but as a memory. Today, every time the bar reflects a silvery moon, the fishermen repeat the same phrase. She lives here. She is the water.
She is the one who never left her people alone.